Okay. First, the controlling style, which we don't need to talk about because it's so common in the culture. It's so prototypical, authoritarian. You know what controlling people do. They take charge. They raise their voice. They shout. They point. They tell you what to do. They kind of take control of the situation. That's why we call it controlling. But the autonomy supportive, we need to explain that. We need to understand what is valuable, what teachers are doing when they're autonomy supportive. So the essence of autonomy support is just that, is to support people's autonomy. So to do that, the first thing you need to do is develop a relationship where you communicate this tone of understanding to the students. I understand you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you, which is, we think, the opposite of a controlling style. So the essence, the starting point is this tone. Why are we talking? Why am I here? What's my role in the classroom? So I'm here to support you. I'm here to understand you, here to help. That's where you start. Now, how do you do that in practice? First thing, the starting point, you always want to begin with taking the student's perspective. It's really hard to be autonomy supportive if you're thinking about your own needs, your own preferences. I've got to teach this material. I've got 6 more minutes to go in the class. I'm assessing learning, and you're really focused on yourself. To really be autonomy supportive, to help someone else, you need to take their perspective. What are their goals? Why are they here? What are they interested in? Are they understanding what I'm doing? So really the starting point. And then once you really feel like you understand who you're interacting with, who's learning you're supporting, then it becomes a matter, okay, now how do I support that learning? So we start off with trying to make the task very interesting. How can I make the task interesting? Because if the task is interesting, then students will engage it. And once they're engaged, they're trying to improve themselves, they're trying to learn, then it's kind of easy, we'll talk about today, but it's kind of easy to support learning an initiative that's ongoing. So how do you get it started in the first place? You give people interesting things to do. Now, I know everything in the class can't be interesting, but also you can explain why things are useful and important. So you can, what we call explanatory rationales. We have a rule, I have a request, I need you to do this. And the reason is, and again, if you give people really satisfying explanations or rationales, they'll generally do it. And while they're doing it, you support that. We can talk about exactly how you support it. But that's what I would start with. I don't want to get it too complicated. Take their perspective, give them interesting things to do, explain why you're asking what you're doing. Generally, people go. It's really an important consideration if you want to become more autonomy supportive, to understand that the critical moments really take place before class begins. It's preparation. So you're developing your lesson. Teachers prepare a lot. They prepare activities. They prepare content. They prepare lots of things. So as you're preparing for class, you really work hard to take the student's perspective. Will students find this interesting? Is this relevant to their goals? Is there an obvious connection with their lives of what we're going to talk about? Will they find this important? So you go over your lesson plan, not from your own perspective, but from the student's perspective. So, okay, maybe they won't find that interesting. Well, you redesign the lesson until you're fairly confident that students will find this interesting. And in the past, students have found this interesting. And this is not so interesting. So it'd be smart to kind of cut this material. Students aren't even there while you're in your office preparing, but you've got them in your head and you're doing these mental simulations. I'm seeing how my students react if I do this, if I do this. So you're trying to tailor the class to something that they'll find really interesting. Now you actually go to class, and then the first few minutes of any learning activity we find are by far the most important because like you said, on the first date, the first few minutes, is the students get that this is going to be interesting or not. This is going to be useful or not. So the critical moment, maybe the critical seconds, 30 seconds, is present the activity and show that it's interesting, present the activity or the material to be learned, and communicate why it's useful. And that's at least half and probably 90% of the game. There's a lot more you can do to be autonomy supportive, but that's where I'd start. If I have the student's perspective and I give interesting, useful activities, then engagement will be on track. So these are the critical moments in the flow. Now, so if class is 50 minutes long, so far we've only talked about 2 minutes of class time or 3 minutes of class time. There's a lot more to be autonomy supportive as you go, but that's the starting point. Let's go a little bit deeper on how do you make something interesting.
Right.
Because it's partly the task, but it's partly the learner as well. It's like reading the newspaper. There's 2 stories. This story's interesting and this story's not interesting. Well, why is that? Well, this story is relevant to my goals. It's relevant to my experience. It's relevant to who I'm trying to become. This is interesting. This other story is kind of irrelevant. It's in the business section or something. So this is just not interesting because it's not consistent with my goals, with my aspirations, with my values, with my purposes. So I'm not going to read it. I'm not interested in it. So in classes, you start off taking students' perspective. You ask them, okay, here's the material for the day. Here's what we're going to cover. Is this interesting to you? And if not, you want to tailor it and revise it until it is. Is this consistent with your goals? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Here's the subject matter. What's useful about this? What do you want to learn about most? And this is how you activate interest. Students have these needs, these interests, the preferences, goals inside them. So you need to align your learning material to bring out their goals. There's a connection. This is relevant to your goals. This is relevant to your values. This is a preferred activity, not a non-preferred activity. So you're working hard to transform your learning activity so it hits instead of misses students' psychological needs.
Right.
But let me go through all 3.
Sure.
For autonomy, it's ask students, what would you like to do? What would you like to do? And this question is sneaky effective because how do you answer a question like, what would you like to do? Well, I'm interested in this. My goal is this. I need this. I'm confused about this. So in a way, students, to answer this question about what would you like to do, they have to go inside themselves and ask, what are my goals? What's important? What's useful? What's meaningful to me to answer the question? So it's a great way to activate autonomous motivation. And competence, how do you do this? Again, the driving force is a challenge, an optimal challenge. It's just the way the human nervous system is. You think about any activity, what makes it interesting? It's probably a sense of challenge. That's a goal, a standard of excellence, a role model. So this is what excellence is, and can you do it? And any kind of question of can you do this involves competence. It's an issue. It's a task, and it's an issue of competence. And that's what we call motivation. I made competence relevant to the activity. So you're not just riding a bike or writing a paper, but you challenge your competence at the same time. So writing a paper might not be interesting, or revising your paper might not be interesting, but challenge yourself as a writer. Can you revise the sentence? Can you clarify the sentence? Can you shorten the sentence? That's challenging, and that's interesting in and of itself, the way sports and things are interesting. And for relatedness, that's the 3rd need that we really emphasize. I think this is the easiest need of all to activate. All it takes is social interaction. Have people talk to each other. Put people in the context of social interaction, and all of a sudden relatedness comes out of their nervous system and is part of the activity. So I'm not only talking about an educational issue, I'm relating to you as another person, and if I get this warmth and acceptance back, it makes the activity fun because I have this relatedness, need satisfaction. The place to start is with the psychological needs, but there are other things that that are easy to insert into a lecture or something like this. I find a lot of teaching my own classes, observing other people's classrooms, just make the effort to insert a brief video. We've been talking about this subject matter. Let me show you what a classroom looks like. Let me show you what a performance looks like. Let me show you what this looks like. And what you'll see is engagements going like this, and you turn on the video. If it's new, if it's the promise of something interesting, the interest engagement will spike up. So I don't go to my class. I usually have, in undergraduates, have lecture classes. So I don't go to those classes anymore without some videos with me. It's just an interesting part of the class. But there's lots of other things you can do. Instead of just telling people about a subject matter, perform a demonstration, do a classroom demonstration, or have students do a demonstration. And it doesn't have to take a lot of class time, a couple of minutes, 2-minute demonstration. It's always interesting. Let me show you how to do it. All of a sudden you get the concentration, people put their iPhones down and they pay attention because this is going to be relevant. He's going to show me how to do it. And begin the learning activity. The purpose of this activity, we're going to try to solve the problem. Your students are disengaged. That's the problem. We're going to try to engage your students. Right. Or you'd like to have cooperative learning in your classroom. Or students are disruptive. There's a fight in your classroom. What's the classroom management approach to this problem? And if people care about the problem, I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to be a coach, I'm going to be a parent. I'm scared of what if students fight? What if there's an argument in class? What if I lose control of the class? So I care about this problem. So then my lecture or the information, the articles I have students read or something, all of a sudden it's interesting because it's useful. I need a solution to that problem. Because I need a solution to the problem, I need to know what you're saying, which is the lecture or the information. And again, you get engagement because you're speaking to people's goals, their lives, their values, you're solving problems that they care about. So I recommend put some videos in there, problem of the day, classroom demonstrations. I think you want to avoid just a lecture. Emphasis on the relevance. It's not about entertainment. It's not about bells and whistles. It's not about putting on a show. It's about making class interesting and useful. And there's lots of ways you can make it interesting and useful, and that we'll talk about. And these are some of the ways. So you work hard to get the video that's highly relevant. It's a beautiful demonstration to supplement the classroom lecture. You don't put on something that's entertaining and off topic. That might be interesting, but it's candy. It's not the meat. And so it's a lot of preparation, but it really hits the bullseye during instruction. Students wind up leaving the class satisfied. I have this problem. That's a good solution. I have this interest. I feel like I understand this material now. I feel satisfied rather than dissatisfied. As a motivation psychologist, by far the number one question I hear from teachers, parents, from anybody is, how can I motivate my students? How can I motivate my children? What can I do? That's the wrong question. Like, what can I do to them? Because that puts you in kind of controlling, take charge, your responsibility kind of consideration. Should I give them rewards, incentives, bonuses, praise, put them in the right school? How should I manage it? It's the wrong question because people have lots of motivation, full motivation in themselves. The question is just what you framed it. How can I create the conditions under which people can motivate themselves? And support or autonomy support is a great condition. You understand me. You modeled the skill for me. You gave me the guidance. You gave me the feedback. You listened to me. You were flexible. Under those conditions, I can motivate myself. Right. And you say, oh, I don't know if that would work with my kid. Just what motivates you? Take it personally, not you motivating somebody else. How do you like to be treated when other people motivate you? You don't like somebody coming and telling you what to do. You say, just help me learn the language. Just help me learn to draw better. Help me learn this. I just need help. I don't need you to take control. Students who are really disengaged. I'm not talking about it loses concentration, but won't even come to class or doesn't participate, sleeps in class, or aggressive to the point of really disrupting the class, or violent or cheating or harming themselves. They really kind of things like that, really disturbing kind of, these are tough. I don't know, how can I support this person's autonomy? The first thing I'd say, look how that person's been treated. At least 9 times out of 10, how people treat this person, they're probably controlling. They're don't do this, you're bad. You can't regulate your own behavior, so I've got to regulate it for you. Very controlling approach. They kind of live in a context of controlled relationships. They leave your classroom and the people that they interact with, try to control them and boss them. So this is what we call it need frustration. It's kind of a manifestation of this. They're not functioning well. They're socially, personally functioning well. So it's a developmental effort. So I'm not going to treat them that way. That's only going to make it worse, because you control people, they put up resistance, they put up defenses. Like, you're against me. You're trying to change me. You're the man. You're the socializer. So I'm going to put up my defenses. And I think what they really need is somebody to sit down with them face to face. Why are you doing this? Trying to understand it. There's probably a good reason. They're aggressive. They're whatever the problem is. They're bored in class. Where's that coming from? And then try to help them. Try to communicate that you're on their side. What do you think's causing this problem? What do you think you could do about it? How could you reverse it if you wanted to make more friends or be more pro-social or do better in school? Where do you think you would start? And then once they start, they probably know some solutions. They start saying some solutions, and then you jump in and provide some support for that, or some perspective that they may not have thought of, or give them access to resources, including you, given the time. That's how people change their behavior. It's not because you made me change my behavior and you consequences. People just say, you know, I'm not going to be a bully anymore. I'm not going to be disengaged. I'm not going to be late for class. I'm going to change my behavior because I want to interact effectively and have friends and things like that. So people change themselves.